a really good, but not maybe not as good an offense as those numbers don't kind of line up with how I remembered it. Like, I thought they were top three in everything offensively, 6th and 9th. And the defensive numbers are actually a little better than I thought they were, because I thought they were maybe bottom 3 in both.
They're not good, though.
Yeah. Brew, do you like these moves, locking up Higgins and Chase?
Well, look, I'm happy for the players. All right, you're always happy when guys get paid. I'm happy Jamar is going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league for another week, probably, or whenever they sign Micah Parsons in Dallas. So good for them. The offense, one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. We get to see that intact. That's what they wanted. And they actually have some pretty decent running backs, too. I mean, they don't have a great back, but Chase Brown, Zach Moss, they brought back Samaje Perine from Kansas City. That's good enough where I think their offense will be very good. Obviously, the question is defense, and they are reportedly trying to bring back Trey Hendrickson. I would have prioritized him ahead of T. Higgins.
Yeah.
All right, so, but here's the deal. Even if they bring him back, okay.
It's the team you had last year.
Right, and you were 25th in defense, and the charge is for them to get to the Super Bowl. And here's a graphic, I think we have it, about teams that have reached the Super Bowl with the lowest ranked defenses this century. Now, it's been done. We saw they were 25th last year. Yeah. The Giants won it in 20.
Which is odd, because by the time those playoffs rolled around, that Giants defense felt really good.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's a difference in what we may see with the Bengals.
Same with that Colts with Bob Sanders, that he came on strong. But go ahead. Sorry.
So, but that's the point. And the Chiefs didn't have a great defense, but 16th is mediocre.
Yeah.
And so, to me, the question is, what are they going to do with the defense? And they haven't done a ton, obviously, in the offseason. So I don't want to say forget, but yeah, there's pressure on Joe Burrow. There's pressure on Zach Taylor. There's pressure on these 2 receivers that just got paid. You know who the most pressure's on?
Who?
Al Golden.
Oh,
the new defensive coordinator that came from Notre Dame. Because they are clearly expecting him to be Vic Fangio.
Yes.
Philadelphia went from 30th ranked defense in scoring to the first ranked defense in scoring in winning the Super Bowl this year. They are expecting him to take this 25th ranked defense and probably get it in the top 10 and then turn Oren Burks or somebody into Zach Bond.
Well, that's the other, or they're also maybe asking Duke Tobin to be Howie Roseman as far as crushing the draft and do all these things. And so I just think this is a bananas way to run a team. Now, people will say, well, Philly pays Devontae, pays AJ, pays Jalen Hurts. I don't want to get too nerdy salary cap, so just please take my word for this. Philly uses void years unlike any other team in the league, and the short version of that is around 2028, 2029, Philadelphia is going to be forced into a temporary reset because
2-3 just bad.
Exactly right, which they're fine with. They're like, so as a for instance, Jalen Hurts, while he's under contract, his cap hit is never more than $45 million, and most years it's under $35 million. And then the first year's contract's expired, it's $97 million in a void year. But they're doing that saying, we are going to win right now, compete. They just did. And then we don't mind if we're really bad for a couple of years, because then we get high draft picks and we keep it going again. The reason some people might be like, well, why doesn't every team do that? That costs your owner a ton of upfront cash that Jeffrey Lurie's willing to pay that almost no other owner is. And so that model is not duplicable. The model they're trying to mimic, it would appear, is Miami's model, which hasn't worked, which is highly paid quarterback, highly paid receivers, typical spending and contract structure, and then work around the margins everywhere else. You have limited assets to improve your team.
Yeah.
And you mentioned just the defense. I'm going to go a step further and say I have real questions about their offensive line. So I look at it as this is a team whose offensive line is mediocre, whose defense was awful, who historically has drafted kind of league average-ish. So none of those things are the situation Philadelphia is in. And so the other thing I'll hear is it's the Peyton Manning model. 2-star receivers, quarterback. Here's the distinction. That team didn't have one Trey Hendrickson. It had two
Yep.
in Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis.
Yep.
And doing it that way, Brew, I think it's fair to say they underachieved.
They got one Super Bowl with Peyton.
The Colts had 13 years with Peyton Manning, made 2 Super Bowls, won 1 with that model. The Broncos had 4 years with a much diminished Peyton Manning, went to 2 Super Bowls, won 1. And so, and Bengals fans might be like, listen, we've never won a Super Bowl, anything. I get it. My point is, I don't think this is the best path forward for them to win a championship. And I think it also, it operates as if Joe Burrow is not a great quarterback, because I think he's a great quarterback, which means I don't think he needs the best receiver duo in the league. But what he does need is help on defense, because he can't touch the field in those spots.
Well,
okay. That's a lot to unpack. Oh, man. That's a lot to unpack. First off, this is where we just love to make stuff up, man. Using the Miami Dolphins as a frame of reference for what they've been able to do. Saying, oh, this is similar to what the Miami Dolphins are doing there. Now, Nick thinks Tua Tagovailoa is a bad quarterback. Like a bottom 5, bottom 10 quarterback. He can't play in the cold. He can't, et cetera, et cetera. Their defense, they had Fangio in the building. And they said, oh, he's too mean. He's too strict. And so then they had to, push him out. All right? So that's just a fundamentally poorly run franchise. So, and I'm not going to act like the Bengals, in comparison, are this greatly run franchise. But they are, at least in this moment of time, trying to make concrete moves. And I do think that the hire that they have defensively at least isn't a legitimate step in the right direction. Firing Fangio was the wrong move for the Miami Dolphins, and that much is proven. And to build a team where you have a bunch of players who don't want to buy into that is on the Miami Dolphins, right? No matter who you want to slice it, whether it was the players that they got, whether it was the coaching staff, et cetera, et cetera. So that's you're not going to be able to just copy and paste those types of issues on the Bengals. At least you shouldn't. So this whole just comparing models and saying these other teams should be able to do it. Guys, it doesn't make sense. Everybody has a different coaching staff, different collection of players, quarterback level, coaching levels. All of this stuff matters. This is so easily highlighted when we look about teams who want to go for it on 4th down, who want to be aggressive. And it's just some teams are poised to go for it on 4th down. Not all teams are. Not all teams have the same level of quarterback. The Las Vegas Raiders with Aiden O'Connell should not be going for it on 4th down as much as the Philadelphia Eagles, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals. So you can't just copy and paste ideologies, philosophies, approaches, etc., etc. So it just doesn't make sense. It really, really doesn't. And yeah, when you do use the Eagles as a reference point in terms of how they approach things, yeah, Jeffrey Lurie is willing to spend way more money, and he puts a lot of the money up front, and and he's willing to actually spend the cash, something that the Bengals are notoriously don't want to do. And lots of franchises don't. As Nick said, really pretty much only the Eagles do that. And that's fair. But then to kind of have this devolve into kind of well, this is what the Miami Dolphins do, and it doesn't work, and it's since when is Tua Tagovailoa the same quarterback as Joe Burrow? It's such an absurd statement to make. It really is. And he's so good. Okay, well, is Zach Taylor as good as a coach as an Andy Reid? No, he's not. So it's it drives me crazy that we try to look at it through this narrow view. We can say, listen, we know that some of these things work, right? We know, hey, look. And this is a made-up example, but Philly, see, they didn't pay for their wide receiver, and they were able to draft this and do that, and that worked. And you could say, okay, that was an interesting way. That's how they won. Can we apply this to our franchise? well, yeah, we do have a really good quarterback as well, and we are set on the O-line, and our GM is actually really good at drafting this talent. Okay, yeah, so then we can. But if not, and you kind of go through the steps and you say, yeah, but they're able to do this, and we're not able to do that, so therefore we have to kind of maybe do something a little bit differently. Yeah, but what you're trying to do didn't work for this team. Yeah, but this team is not us because of this. We might have a better coach, we have a better GM, whatever it may be. So you can't always just 100% compare what other teams do. You can use them as a reference point, and this is where the Eagles now do make sense as a reference point. You're getting a new defensive coordinator who you believe is going to make a significant difference on your defense. That alone. And now you're also going to work with that defensive coordinator to try to figure out what pieces do you need defensively? What do you need to build this defense up? Which is now hopefully going to improve the quality of your GM in the draft and free agency, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to kind of go from there. I mean, make no mistake about it, right? They needed, the Philadelphia Eagles, they hired Fangio, and they had like one of the worst defenses and turned it around. But it was because of Fangio. It was because of Cooper DeJean, Mitchell, the two guys who they drafted, Bond and free agency, picking up CJ Gardner-Johnson. Like, it was a series of steps, a series of moves that I've very frequently highlighted for a lot of teams who are trying to figure out, what did the Eagles do? And so for the Bengals, like I often say at this point in the season, this just has to be one of many moves, right? This is not the move. And so they can't say, oh, well, this is the same team as last year. No, the coaching for the defense for the Bengals has not been good. That's just the reality. That's just a fact. So, getting a new coach who you believe is going to be a big difference maker and a bit of a swing, obviously not as proven as, say, like a Fangio, but still a bit of a swing. Well, then you have to see that decision unfold. You have to see, was that the right move? And this idea that, okay, well, Joe Burrow is a really good quarterback, so he doesn't need these great wide receivers. So it's like, so then again, you want him to then potentially take a risk on defense. You want him to not have great wide receivers. Like I just don't understand then what you're expecting Joe Burrow to be able to do. I really don't get it. And the reality is that you don't even need this defense. Considering what the Bengals were able to do all last season, you didn't need the defense to be that special, quite frankly. You just needed it to be competent. And if it was just competent, I mean, then they win. They legitimately win. Then they are in the playoffs. They are potentially in the AFC Championship game. Like, then it matters. So we look at this defense. And this is where rankings can always be so misleading. The Chiefs. We'll use the Chiefs because it's the most recent example, right? They had the 16th best defense or whatever, right? And which Bruce said was like, essentially average. But then you got to look and see how they actually played against the good teams or against the games that really mattered, right? They hold the Bills to 24. They held the 49ers to 23. They hold the Titans to 17. The Jags to 17, who they beat in the playoffs, held them to 20. Held the Bengals to 20. The big one that they gave up was 35 points to the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. But in these games, in the games that really mattered, when the defense really needed to stand up, the defense showed up. So that's still a very competent defense. And again, if you're giving up 20 points in the division and conference round of the playoffs, that's massive. I mean, that's huge. It's like you are putting your team in a position to win some games. Seriously. Here are the games that matter against Kansas City. 26 points. Washington, 38 points. Baltimore, 41 points. Philly, 37 points. Baltimore again, 35 points. Los Angeles Chargers, 34 points. You understand? You see all these big points against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 44 points. Like, those things matter, man. Those things matter. That's how you get those losses. So it's not a matter of just the because when we look at those rankings, that's just based off of the scoring, how many points they're giving up. But to me, like, that's a nice frame of reference, a nice kind of like baseline. But it's like, what does that defense do in the games that matter, right? Against the Ravens. Oh, you give up like 40 some points. Oh, okay. Like it matters. It matters. So you can't just say like, oh, this. So and to me, a lot of that is coaching. It's the players themselves, but also coaching. It's understanding your opponent, understanding the opposing quarterback, how the offensive coach or offensive coordinator, depending on the team, how they want to run their offense, whatever it may be. Coaching is a huge aspect of that. To me, so much of the Super Bowl was talking about how will Fangio do against Andy Reid, how will Kellen Moore fare against Spags, etc., etc. And so to me, that's what you're then also relying on with the Bengals to really elevate. I think if the Eagles had pretty much any other defensive coordinator outside of maybe like another truly special defensive coordinator, they do not win the Super Bowl, even though they have the exact same players. So it's just, coaching cannot be under discussed in this reference point. So, that's really what the Bengals are also hoping to achieve. They're like, dude, we got this offense humming. Do you realize that if we just have a competent defense, if we just had the 22 Chiefs defense, we are legitimately in the playoffs, no, without a shadow of a doubt. And if that defense then steps up in the playoffs and holds teams to only 20 points in the first 2 rounds, well, then yes, we can also get to the Super Bowl. I mean, at that point, it's just kind of basic math. And again, that's coaching. That's coaching. So you got to be careful with when you're just automatically comparing to these other teams. If you're going to make these comparisons, then you kind of have to continue the thread. You have to really continue to look down in it. And it's not worth it to look at the Giants and the Colts and this and that, because it's just like, at that point, who cares? What the Colts did in 2006 is it's a different NFL. It's a different NFL in 2011. It was a different NFL in 2009, because again, even this 2007 Giants is so misleading. They had Spags the one year, and I've unpacked this before. I mean, that Patriots team, that was like the undefeated Patriots team. And I think it was 2007, not 2011. I believe it was 2007. Historical. I mean, they were putting up points. I mean, 40, 50. I mean, like, it was absolutely outrageous. And Spags absolutely shut down that offense. It wasn't because they were able to overcome their bad defense. They had the 17th ranked defense, and they were able to overcome it. And that's not what happened. The defense played like literally one of the best defenses in the history of the NFL, because they shut down historically one of the greatest offense in the history of the NFL. Like, so that context matters. That matters. Can that defense, even if just average or bad or kind of good or inconsistent, do they rise to the occasion when it matters most? So, it's a more nuanced conversation than just saying, well, they're paying Chase and Higgins too much money. They're not going to be able to build the defense now. Also, look at all these teams who've been able to win a Super Bowl with bad defenses. It's like, you got to unpack them more. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Cincinnati Bengals agreeing to these massive deals? Do you agree with Nick that this is just bad business? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.